button. And please click the thumbs up if you're able to see that. The thumbs up with the one finger. We will use the raise hand if you have question.
Sorry. Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. Let's practice that so that we will have an interactive. Yes. Go ahead and give me a thumbs up if you're able to do that. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. Please, really quick, please share with us what city you're from. Please type in the chat box the city you're from or what country you're from, so that Dr. Herman can see where everybody is. Please type the city and the country you're from if you're not from the US. Saigon, Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh, Vietnam. Very good. Hello, Dr. Đạt. Hello, Dr. Lê. Hello, Dr. Nguyễn, Thảo Nguyễn. Thank you. If you're a medical student, please type medical student. If you're a doctor, please type doctor. Hello, Dr. No. Okay. Warming everybody up today. We have a medical student, True Minh from Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. Phương, a medical student from Hanoi, Vietnam. Very good. Okay. So today meetings, we will be talking primarily in English, and we'll have recording so that if you need to watch this again, you will have an opportunity to do so later. Yan is a second year medical student. Very good. Welcome, Yan. All right. For those who just joined us, if you can hear us, please comment yes. Please introduce yourself. If you're a medical student and where you're from, or if you're a doctor and where you're from. All right, we'll take 3 more minutes before we officially start with our workshop today. Oh, we have a master. What's UMP? I'm not sure what that is. We have an internal medicine doctor from Saigon, Vietnam. Very good. What is UMP? University of Medicine and Pharmacy. Okay, very good. All right. We'll take 2 more minutes to introduce ourselves. I see a lot of people joining. Please introduce yourself to us so that we get to know each other better. We have a 3rd year medical student from Saigon, Vietnam. We have a lot of medical students who's interested in this topic. That is wonderful. It's good to start early and start correctly. Very good. Okay. Oh, we have a physical therapy student as well. From Hai Dương, Vietnam. Very good. Wonderful. So let's start. Today is my honor to introduce to you Dr. Andrea Herman. She is a very, very experienced family medicine doctor. She's currently the medical director, the site leader at the clinic that I am currently working in Omaha, Nebraska. And she is a wonderful teacher, wonderful mentor. And I am very happy, very honored that she agreed to join me today in this workshop with everybody. So please join me in giving her an applause to welcome her to today's meeting. If everybody can click the reaction and give Dr. Herman a virtual applause, that would be awesome. Can you see the virtual applause? Okay, thank you very much. We'll have Dr. Herman, please say a few words to our participant today.
All right. Well, I say I've already given good morning greetings to Dr. Wen. So good morning to everybody in the United States. I suppose it would be good evening to those of you in Southeast Asia, in Vietnam. I'm not sure how far ahead you guys are of us.
We are 24 hours. I think 24 hours.
Oh, it's 24 hours.
I mean, oh, no, I'm sorry. It's 12 hours. 12 hours.
Kind of like India then. I think India might be 10 and a half or 11 and a half, depending on whether in daylight savings or not. So anyway, it's a pleasure to be here with you virtually. Thank you to Dr. Wen for inviting me. Thank you for the kind words. And I also want to extend my appreciation to Dr. Wen. She adds a great addition to our clinic. She's very motivated to do well, care for her patients, not afraid to ask questions or try new things. So that's great. So to introduce myself, again, Andrea Herman is my name. That's my maiden name. I am married. My husband is from India. His last name's difficult for Americans to pronounce, so we agreed I would go by Herman in my practice and professionally. I graduated from residency in Sioux City, Iowa, 23 years ago. So I've been in practice for 23 years and seen a few changes since then. I've been with our health system. We both work for CHI, and I've been at that location for 8 years, because it used to be a different name before it was CHI. We got swallowed up, but you don't need to know all that. So that is, and then as Dr. Wen said, I'm the site leader for our clinic, where I serve as a liaison between providers, our nurse practitioners, PAs, and doctors, and our administration. So I report things that are going well, things that could be better, go to meetings, try to keep everybody updated on things both ways.
Thank you, Dr. Herman. It's wonderful to have you here. So for our topic today, we want to talk about a good patient experience. So before we go into details, let's talk about what does it mean to have a good patient experience. What does that look like?
What does a good patient experience look like? It sort of depends on the patient, but I think the main thing is when a patient comes in, they want to feel like somebody listened to them, somebody cared, somebody has a solution. Sometimes patients just want to vent, but they want to make sure their agenda is met. And so I guess that's what I would consider the most important part of the patient experience, that we were able to meet the needs of that patient at that visit. Or if we can't, maybe we've got a plan to start meeting the patient's expectations. Or maybe there's I'm sorry, I'm really
relationship between patient here in the US, patient with doctor in the US versus that in Vietnam and other country. In Vietnam, sometimes patients tend to be more likely to listen to doctor, and they respect doctor. They feel like the doctor can tell them what to do, and they usually don't have a lot of question or a lot of resistance in that relationship. Excuse my voice. So how do you view the relationship between patient and doctor in the US?
That's a good point, what you said, Dr. Nguyen. I've seen that as well in India, for example, where my husband is from, when we've been to the doctor a few times, accompanied my mother-in-law to the doctor. And I spent time with some doctors in India. And it used to be a lot like that here. It was very paternalistic. The patient would say a few things, and then the doctor would say this, that, and this is what is wrong. This is what you will do. And didn't seem like there was a whole lot of dialogue or between the patient and the doctor. And that has evolved to more of a partnership between the patient and the doctor, because the doctor can only do so much. Yeah, we can make some is to be the patient's first point of contact, and overseeing the entirety of their health care, and making sure basic things are being done to provide for the patient's health. If the patient, for example, we want to make sure, for example, that the patient's up to date with screening tests, for example, make sure they're current with mammograms, pap smears, make sure they've been screened for diabetes, and engage in, help with preventive care. So they, hopefully don't have to go see a specialist for complications of a health condition that could have been prevented had they, stayed current with screening recommendations. It can also, we've been family medicine and other primary care specialties such as peds and internal medicine have also sort of been viewed as gatekeepers. You go through your primary care doctor first before you're referred to a specialist, because maybe that symptom you're having, maybe you don't need to see a specialist first of all for the symptom you're having, and maybe you need to see a different specialist than the one that you chose. For example, I'm trying to think here. Maybe you're having chest pain and you think, chest pain, I've got to see a cardiologist. Well, maybe you do, but maybe that pain is referred from another problem inside of inside of your body. Maybe it's esophageal tumor, and the specialist whom you see may be able to figure that out. However, they're going to send you to another specialist, and possibly, and then there's no one to see the big picture, so to speak, of the health for the patient. And then tests can be repeated, and the care is not as cohesive, perhaps less organized. And sometimes people say, why would I want to go to a family medicine doctor? Sometimes we're called GPs, general practitioners. They don't know anything. All they're going to do is send me to this doctor and that. Well, we might refer, but at least we'll make sure that that you're evaluated, that patients are evaluated comprehensively. And while they're there, let's make sure you are current with we'll make sure the patient is current with their colonoscopy, their pap smear, and screen for diabetes, and if they'll let us anyway. So that's where and I think we really shine with population health. And so, if we can keep everybody current with the basics, and then, get them engaged. I think a lot of people nowadays, they know some of the basics. Yeah, I should exercise. Yeah, I should eat right. I should maintain a healthy weight. But we're doing a lousy job of doing it in America. So our job is to help engage the patients, so they don't need to see a specialist for end stage problems anyway. So nothing against specialists, of course. We need them. We need to partner with them. But prevention, I guess, is one of the goals. Yes, and I'm looking at a comment from Dr. Tao Wen. Yes, we can see the big picture, so to speak. Or sometimes we call that the 30,000 foot view.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that feedback. Thank you for that feedback and that plot. I really think that a lot of people don't really understand about family medicine, but like you said, it's very important for preventative healthcare, so that we don't get to the point where we need a lot of advanced care in the future. And, especially with colon cancer screening, breast cancer screening, cervical cancer screening, a lot of that, those we know for a fact that if it's detected early, can have really good outcome for the patients. So very good. And for the next part, I have a list of questions from the participants, and I believe that they are very, very excited to talk about this topic. Is that right, everybody? Please give me a thumbs up if you're excited to get into the questions that you send me. So please give me a thumbs up. Or say yes in the comment. Please say yes in the comment so that I know that you're ready for this part. So for the first question, how do we help patients to open up and share with us? If they are very hesitant, if for some reason they feel that they're still holding back something, we feel that they're holding back something, but they not willing to share that.
Okay. So, well, I'm going to back up just a little bit and start with, and I meant to point this out earlier, that at CHI, we use a customer service technique called AIDIT when we first meet a patient, and for ongoing engagement too with patients and even with staff, or colleagues. And AIDIT stands for acknowledge, introduce, duration, explanation, and thank you. Acknowledge means you greet the patient by name and other people in the room as well. Maybe they've brought somebody with them. And sometimes I'll say, why, hello, Mrs. Smith, it's nice to meet you. I see you have somebody here with you. They must be important. Hi, I'm Dr. Herman. What's your name? And what is the relationship? Or how do you know Mrs. Smith, for example? And then I'll introduce myself. I'm Dr. Andrea Herman. I've been with CHI for 8 years and boarded in family medicine. And then duration, how long things take. Like when I order a test, I may say to the patient, my nurse will be in probably 3 to 5 minutes to draw your blood, and then you can expect a phone call or an electronic message in 1 to 5 days, etc. Explanation. Explain what's going on, what the next step is, maybe explain what a test is and what it means, how to get a hold of us, how to reach us. And then thank you. Thank you for coming to choosing CHI. Thank you for coming to see me. Thank you for telling me that. And then sometimes when we make a mistake, thank you for your understanding. So that process in itself can help to build rapport because you're keeping them informed, and that's actually part of education. They may not have been to your clinic before. They've never met you before. They don't know your style necessarily. So if a patient's holding back, what I'll often say, what I try to remember to ask when I'm interviewing the patient, is there anything else you'd like to tell me? Is there, and if I'm, and then leave the door open for them to say something, or are there any other concerns? And if it's a difficult topic, maybe it's a very personal concern. Maybe they're having pelvic pain, for instance, or maybe they're concerned that their spouse or their partner has been unfaithful, and they're concerned they have an STD, or maybe they're concerned they've got cancer because their mother died of cervical cancer, or maybe there's been domestic violence, and they just they're afraid to share those things. Sometimes acknowledging that can be helpful. Like, for example, when patients come in with pain like you have and symptoms like you have, that can be really hard to talk about. It really helps me if I've got the complete history of when the patient can give me important information, like if they've had new partners, for instance. This can be really hard to talk about. So giving some examples like that, letting them know they're not alone. For example, maybe somebody fell asleep on the job and they're afraid they're going to get fired, if they convey that. And, if maybe there was an accident at work or something, and I'll sometimes use phrasing like, work accidents can be really scary. Sometimes people tell me that they're afraid they will get fired because they did not follow company policy, or they did something that could get them fired. Does any of that, are you concerned about anything like that? And I'll often explain, I'm trying to be thorough, so I get all the information I can get to try to help. We want to help. I will reassure the patient, at least in America anyway, that this isn't going anywhere. Your medical chart, the information on your chart cannot be released without your consent. With limitations. For example, if it is a workers' comp incident and they're claiming workers' comp, then the workers' comp insurance does have the right to look at the chart. So, that's very good in the chat. Letting the patient know they're not alone, and acknowledging some things that are just hard to talk about. And then when they do start to share, acknowledging that, sometimes they'll say, wow, that took a lot of courage. That must have been really hard to say. Thank you for trusting me to tell me that, for example.
Thank you, Dr. Herman. So I've summarized Dr. Herman's words in the chat box so that everybody can follow along. Mm-hmm. Does that help? Does anyone have any question after Dr. Herman's answering that question for us? Please raise your hand if you have a question about this part of how we want to help patient to open up to us.
And that's a very good question, because some patients it's very hard for them to share certain things. For example, I had a patient years ago that had shared with me that she, bore a baby before she met her husband and never told him. And she that was something that had come up in the history taking. And fortunately, I was able to reassure her, that would not go anywhere. In fact, I don't think I even wrote it down on the chart. There are some things you will find. There are some things told in confidence that, to quote a previous doctor I worked with, you will take to your grave. Mm-hmm. You won't speak of it again with the patient. You won't, unless they invite it, you will not write it down in the chart. And it may not be, some things you need to write down, but even that can be, that's another topic, I guess, for conversation. But, it's, you will not, you just won't share, with anyone. So,
yeah, that's a very powerful example. Now, it made me wonder, how do you remember?
How do you remember that?
So
Think like what I just said. Those are one-offs. That is, thankfully, it doesn't happen very often. And thankfully, it was something that was helpful to know, but not critical to share. And if something very personal like that has to be addressed, maybe a patient was using drugs, in their job, or they are engaging in a sexual relationship outside of their marriage, or they're outside their partner without the partner.
And that can be important for the diagnosis and the treatments. And it's really important to be able to explore everything. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I like the thing that you say, other people with this symptom tend to have, so that phrase make people feel that they are not alone, and make them feel that it's less attacking to them. It's less, it makes them feel like they can share more. So that's a very good phrase to use.
Mm-hmm. And maybe if you are a medical student or a new doctor, you may not have seen that particular condition before, but you're trained, you've read things and you have your training, and so it's always accurate to say sometimes patients in your situation, fill in the blank, or
yeah. Right. Now, have you met a patient where they had an emotional breakdown during an encounter, and how do you respond to that? I remember when I first started, that tend to make me feel very awkward. Like, do I offer them comfort or do I not? Or so that would be interesting to know.
Okay, when a patient has a breakdown, and for example, if they start crying, and one of the first things I do, I will grab tissues. I grab the Kleenex box and offer them a tissue. And then I might put a hand, on their shoulder briefly. Maybe, with COVID, there's been a little less touching. And I'll sanitize my hand before I do that, maybe just briefly touch their hand. Sometimes patients will want to hold your hand, especially many times if they're older, or, if they're female, or, it just depends on the patient. Some patients find that touch comforting, and then pause, and then acknowledge the moment. Wow, I can see you're real upset right now, or, oh my, I'm sorry this is causing you so much distress, or, and if it, and then sometimes, patients can go on and on and on. Sometimes if it looks like they're just not sometimes you'll have to provide a little redirection. Like, I know this is really hard for you right now. Are you okay? And by the way, that word, are you okay with me doing X or whatever, or with you doing X? Are you okay with continuing right now? would you like me to step out of the room a little bit to give you some privacy and some time? And those are things, behaviors we can do to acknowledge that they're really upset. They've lost their composure, and they may not be able to talk right then. And patients will, they may respond in a variety of ways. They'll sometimes I'll ask, hey, can we talk about this a little more? Is it okay to talk about this a bit more? Unfortunately, sometimes these kinds of encounters can really put you behind, because you are trying to provide support. And sometimes it's good. Sometimes the patient will just want to have a few minutes to themselves to compose themselves, but oftentimes people will usually respond to your questions, and then suggesting a next step. And I guess acknowledging their distress is the first step that I would do. And sometimes if there really is a time limitation, sometimes I'll say, I know this is really upsetting for you. It's going to take time to delve into this more. I'd like, if it's okay with you, I'd like to suggest that we start with this, and let's schedule another appointment, in another, few days, a week, or whatever seems appropriate to the situation. And to follow up on this, to acknowledge that this is important. Maybe they've been given an upsetting diagnosis. We have to tell them, that spot on your lung, I'm so sorry, this is bad news. This spot is cancer. And I know this is horribly upsetting news. I hate to tell patients these things. I want to help you start treatment, or start to do what we can to help you get better. To let them know that you're acknowledging it's hard, but there's a plan, to start looking forward, that this isn't the end necessarily. And I will help you. I will partner with you in this. I will help you get the right people to see. I will help you with, or my staff and I will help you start on the next step. So does that explain that? Those are a few things. It depends on the circumstances a lot, whether it's emotional, like depression, or if they're upset about, a loss, upset about a negative diagnosis, maybe they're upset with me, they don't like how I did something. Which can happen. Sometimes I don't always connect with patients as I didn't. I'll be the first to say I don't always fulfill patients' expectations. So thankfully that doesn't happen a whole lot. But
thank you so much for sharing, Dr. Herman. I think this is a very good framework for everybody to start to practice. Start it out with when patient is crying, offer them a tissue box. You can offer a touch if you feel like the patient would be open for that. Some people don't like to be touched, others are more receptive to that. And, pausing is good, acknowledging the moment, ask for permission to move on to a different topic or do anything. I think those are really good guidelines that we can apply to almost every situation. And like you said, in each particular situation, there will be different things to do. You mentioned when you and the patient don't connect, how do you get out of that situation then?
Okay. I'll apologize. Say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that our signals crossed. I'm sorry I didn't understand that I didn't clarify what you meant, and how can we how can we get back on track? Or, I totally missed that. I did not see that coming, for example, and just be straightforward. I mean, it doesn't do any good to cover things up or make excuses. The buck stops here. It doesn't matter if it's an insurance issue or an appointment didn't get scheduled, you're not available. Patients don't care that, you have to code a certain way. They don't, the fact that you're understaffed, that's irrelevant to them. Perception is reality. And, I don't take unnecessary blame. For example, if they're angry, they can't get in to see me, and I'll apologize for the inconvenience and say, I see that my staff did offer you an appointment with another provider at our clinic, and so just acknowledge it, acknowledge acknowledge the incident, whatever it was, and be honest, straightforward, and how we can avoid that next time. And so again, depends on the situation. But
thank you very much. That's really helpful. A lot of time when the patients start to throw out all these blames, you start to get into a defensive position, like just a natural human instinct. So having a few guidelines of how to react and kind of catch yourself before you get into bigger trouble would be very good. So and for the next part, I see a few people asking question about counseling patient and about treatment plan. So how do we convince patient or recommend patients so that they can agree to our treatment plan?
I'm laughing because that's one of the hardest things to do. That's a whole another topic, isn't it, Dr. Wen? Motivational interviewing.
Yeah.
And so I think the first thing is to ask the patient, what do they know about their condition? Assess their fund of knowledge. For example, they've been diagnosed with diabetes, and this takes time. But sometimes I'll ask, what do you know about diabetes? And listen to what they understand. And and then acknowledge what they know, and I might say, well, you're right. That's a large part of what diabetes is. And or correct any misperceptions, and then sometimes I'll just ask them, what do you think, do you have any idea what we should do next? Sometimes patients have an agenda, and that's one of the first things about connecting with the patient is, asking what their expectations are at the beginning of the visit, or ask your nurse to ask them what their expectations are, or agenda. And sometimes the patient says, for diabetes, for instance, if I just take a pill, I'll be fine, so that's where educating patient on the particular diagnosis they have is important. And then explaining and making sure they understand the treatment. For example, well, the first thing that we do is, we recommend that you change change your lifestyle. This means, eating differently, moving a little differently. And this is what has been shown to help. And if you feel it might help, throw in some data. Research has shown, or we have found patients do better, or it helps when the patient does this or that, or we found that, this medication can help, if it helps get your blood sugars down, your risk of complications will go down, and then you won't go, you'll get to, you'll feel better, you'll be able to retain your vision, and you'll do better. And that applies to this, situation. If it has to do with the medication, explaining how the medication works, and why it's important to, lower their blood pressure, for instance. This is what high blood pressure does. If we don't, and present alternatives. If we don't do this, this is what will be likely to happen, or will happen, And so if we do this, we will reduce the odds of that happening. And I think it's important to set realistic expectations for the treatment plan. This treatment may not cure you, but it's likely to improve your quality of life. You'll do better, you'll feel better. In the case of high blood pressure, for example, sometimes patients feel fine. I feel fine. Why should I take medicine? And sometimes I'll say, you'll feel fine until you have that, hemorrhage in your brain, and you have a big headache, and then you can't walk or talk. And that depends on the patient. I use a sense of humor a lot. I am fortunate with a lot of my patients. I'm familiar with them. I've known them for years. And I try to gauge my response to theirs. If I feel like they are, if they feel like they're more serious or somber, I will adopt that approach. If I get the sense that if they have a sense of humor, then I'll try to, I guess I use humor a lot in my office for patients that, where it's appropriate. Of course, I'm serious when it's called for, and address the situation at hand. So those are things that I helped do to help them engage with the treatment. The other thing is ask what the barrier is. What makes it hard for you to do this? Tell me what makes it hard for you to do this, or what's standing in the way. Sometimes I'll ask them, what do you think we should do? Sometimes the patient comes up with great solutions. There's an old saying, listen to the patient. They'll tell you what's wrong and what to do about it.
That is really wonderful. I remember my attending in residency, Dr. Abduj. He used to tell me that, if you listen hard, if you listen long enough, the patient would tell you what's wrong with them. And if you keep listening, they would tell you what to do about it. So that is very, very true, very wise. And I think that these are really good, helpful tips. And I have put the summary in the chat box for everybody to follow along. And a very hot topic right now is a COVID-19 vaccine. And a lot of participants wonder, how do we counsel patients on getting vaccinated with COVID-19 vaccine? If you have any stories, any tips for us to do that.
Okay. Well, that's a hard one. I still have some hardcore patients that won't do it, but fortunately they are in the minority. Well, first of all, I do recommend they get vaccinated. Many patients express doubt because it was developed very quickly. And I reassure them that, I've read this, I've researched it myself, that the same steps were followed for vaccine development. What's different is the money that was poured into it. The vaccine manufacturers knew they would have a market for an effective vaccine. So there was collaboration. And that's why we were able to bring it to market so quickly, or develop a vaccine so quickly. I also explained the numbers. It was a huge trial. I don't know for sure if it was the biggest vaccine trial ever, but I mean, hundreds of thousands of patients were in the trial. I tell them I got vaccinated myself. When it first came out, I point to the population that was vaccinated first. In the US, we vaccinated frail, elderly, or people in otherwise frail health, in nursing the sick. And we began vaccinating them, and they stopped dying. The death curve just went, is what I'll say. And then the healthcare providers, the majority of healthcare workers, providers, waited in line to get vaccinated. Look who if it's an experiment, look who got experimented on first, and reminding them the length of time, how the vaccine has been investigated. Shots went into the first volunteers in March of 2020. So it's almost 18 months, and there's been no report of, permanent adverse reactions yet. I mean, yes, and I acknowledge their concerns. Yes, there have been sadly very, very rare reports of people dying with the vaccine. That is the case with any vaccine. That is not unique to COVID. In fact, in America, there is even something called the Vaccine Compensation Fund for the exceedingly rare instances where a patient does suffer a permanent adverse effect of a vaccine. Sadly, it does happen. I mean, it's infinitesimal risk. Acknowledge their concerns. I'll tell them a lot of patients were concerned about this. In the case of children, I'll tell patients, my pregnant patients my pregnant colleagues are getting vaccinated. My breastfeeding colleagues are getting vaccinated. My colleagues are vaccinating their children. I have no children, but if I did, I would vaccinate them if they were eligible. I would point out right now, we could sadly point out that over 90% of people in the hospital with COVID are unvaccinated. So I try to acknowledge their concerns, and I try to throw the weight of our relationship into it. Mrs. Smith, we've known each other for 18 years or however long it's been. And I want the best for you, and so I've been able to persuade a few. I do also tell them my direct experience with COVID. I have seen patients walk in here struggling to breathe. I've examined them. I've listened to their horrible lung sounds. I've seen their x-rays with my own eyes. I get the death reports from the hospital. And then I've seen their lengthy recovery. And I don't want you to experience that. And I acknowledge this is a strange disease. The symptoms can be 0 to death, and you can't predict who's going to do well. I'll throw other examples. I had a 102 patient who survived COVID at home. He was miserable for weeks, but he survived. And I had a 60-year-old patient that died, that didn't have that many comorbidities. And then there's been some famous examples. We had in Nebraska, it was in the newspaper, a 31-year-old farmer with no pre-existing illnesses had so much lung damage, he got a lung transplant. And we have a couple of patients in our practice that need lung transplants because the COVID-19 damaged our lungs so badly. So those are instances. I try to make it relatable to the patient. We have, unfortunately, some patients that think this is all political. I will remind them that past president got vaccinated, and he's still around. I mean, that's public knowledge, and I try to tell them, I'm not political. I care about you. I care about my patients, and point out that if they get sick, again, remind them, it's not just you. If it was just you that died, that's one thing, but you can take people down with you, so it's just trying to get them to think about others as well, and I liken it to seatbelts. This is where we were with wearing a seatbelt back in the 80s, we looked at the data and found that if you crash, you are much more likely to die if you are not wearing a seatbelt. Yes, there will be a few that will die even though they're wearing a seatbelt, but it is far fewer. Just look at the numbers. So those are a few strategies I do And I've been able to convince a few, here and there. Oh yeah, I lost the audio there, Dr. Wynn.
Thank you. So I thank you for all these tips. I think these are very important things to share with patients. In a few instances, patient is still very resistant. And what I find helpful in those situations is maybe just keep the dialogue open so that we can revisit that next time. And that's a nice thing about primary care and family medicine is we have that continuity. We can come back, we can see patient again for a follow-up visit, and we can, try to talk about it another time. And sometimes people change their mind next time when they come back.
It's true. And Dr. Wynn, you said something, you said a word that's very important for primary care. And I should have mentioned that when you asked, what is the importance of primary care? Continuity, having a relationship with the same person or provider, or at least the same clinic, so that the records, are there, is one of our strengths. And you're right, that can serve as a basis, and keeping the dialogue open. And that leads to something else I will tell patients. I respect that you disagree with me. I respect that you don't want to get vaccinated. I respect that decision. I disagree with it, but I respect it. And I will still care for you. So just I just wanted to insert that. I know it's 9:30.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's so important. I have a patient tells me that he does not vaccinate his child because he did not believe in vaccination at all. And he say one thing that kind of make me feel that there is nothing can get through him anymore is he said that, if something happened to this son and because of that I'm not vaccinating him, maybe that is God teaching me a lesson. So, he even go to that extreme. And so in those instances, there is no use trying to convince or trying to force him anymore. But I still, very respectfully continue to take care of him and have a conversation with him. And I think that he still come back to me for that reason that I respect that disagreement.
And in cases like that too, I'll remind the patient, when for example, if I recommend a vaccine at the next visit, he says, I don't take vaccines, whatever. And I will remind them, you're paying me to recommend and advise. So I am obligated to recommend this. You don't have to do it, but I'm obligated to recommend it by the standards of care set forth by our academies and, and your insurance company, if they have, insurance is paying me to recommend this, so just in case they think I'm, digging at them or, nagging them, which I do tell them I'm a professional nagger.
That's what we pay for, right? So that's very good. I think we are about time for our 1 hour limit. Does anybody have any question or comments about our conversation today with Dr. Herman? We can take maybe 5 minutes to share that, and so that we can respect everybody's time. Please raise your hand if you would like to speak. Let's see. All right. Can everybody understand us so far? Okay. I know it's all in English, so it might be a little bit difficult, but I hope that you are able to follow along. Dr. No, do you have any question? I know that you're very interested in primary care as well.
Good morning, Dr. Herman and Dr. Christina. So I have been watching your dialogue about this topic, and I really really interested in primary care as well as how we can provide effectively care for the patient. So I just have one question about when at the at the doctor when we interview and examine a patient with a hearing loss or the patient had problem with hearing. So what do you think? How do you do you have any recommendation so that we can effectively interview as well as give recommendation to the patient, so we can make sure that they really understand what we them to do with our recommendation?
Okay. So your question is how to interview the patient effectively who's hearing impaired.
Yeah, that's correct,
and
doctor.
How to make sure they understand us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's Dr. correct.
Okay. Are you talking about a patient who's totally deaf and uses sign language, or someone who's hearing impaired and just, is not considered?
Yeah, the patient with the hearing impairment, not totally lost. Yes.
Okay. One of this can take a little more time. What I will do is make sure try to be face to face with them. Sit directly in front of them. And this is so hard with the mask. We can hear people that are hearing impaired tend to lose high frequency hearing first. So they can understand us better if we speak in a lower voice, if we can, and project some too, which can help save our voice. And this can be hard for women, but with practice, I think you can do it. If you've ever taken drama classes, they tell you to project, talk with, from your diaphragm, or if you've taken singing lessons, breathe through your diaphragm and, talk from here, not from here. Okay. And I haven't looked, but you can probably find online videos how to modulate your voice. But speaking directly, slowly, not so slow it's distracting, but slow. And I'll start with this. Can you hear me like this? Can you hear me if I talk like this? And make sure they understand. And then move and then continue the conversation that way. So that's what I have found to be helpful. I grew up with a dad who was hearing impaired, and so we just grew up shouting. And in fact, I get in that mode because so many of my patients are hard of hearing. And then the next patient says, Dr. Herman, you don't have to talk so loud. So.
That's wonderful. I definitely took that advice from one of my attending when I was a resident, and I lower my voice. It sounds deeper, and which has been very helpful when I talk to patients, especially nowadays with the mask. It's hard to read they can't read your lips. So having a deeper voice definitely benefits us. Very good. Thank you so much, everybody. I do have a survey. I have sent the link in the chat box, and please click on the link and give us a few minutes to fill out this survey for us if you can. This would be good feedback for Dr. Herman and I for this workshop, and also feedback for me so that we can have other workshops in the futures. So please take a few moments to do that. And, if you have enjoyed this workshop so far, please give me a hand, give Dr. Herman a hand, so that we can show our appreciation to Dr. Herman and taking her precious time on a Sunday morning to talk with us. So please give her a hand. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. And so this is... And the last thing, I would like everybody to turn on your webcam so that we can take a picture together to have a memory of our time today. So this is the picture of our feedback. So please take a few minutes to do this for us, and turn on your webcam as well. Thank you. All right. So, all right, I can start seeing everybody. Turn on your webcam. Wonderful. All right. Okay, let's take another minute. Please turn on your webcam. I think all the questions today are really good questions, and these are very good topic for us to learn about in the future. You know, it takes a lot of practice and years of experience, and I'm so happy that Dr. Herman can share with us all those very valuable tips there. And I will post the recording of this video today. So if anybody would like to watch it again, to review it, if something that you think that you did not hear fast enough today, you can have an opportunity to watch it again. All right, so I will count to 3 and everybody smile big, okay? All right, 1, 2, and 3. All right, one more time. Okay, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, very good, everybody. So thank you so much, everyone. And I hope you have a wonderful night in Vietnam. For those in the US, have a wonderful day. I wish Dr. Herman a wonderful weekend. If Dr. Herman have any last word for everybody, please share with us.
I would say it was a pleasure to be here, and it was nice to be with you virtually, and all the best.
Yes. Thank you very much, and goodbye, everybody. Please take a minute to do the survey for me. Goodbye.
Recording stopped.